Hi and welcome to episode 20 of Every Semicolon. 20, that's pretty cool. It's like a bit of a milestone there. Um, yeah, and I think I was looking at the video playlist on YouTube, and after the last upload, and it was actually more like 30 hours now, just under 30 hours, when previously, I think in the last episode I said around 35, I was thinking it was, so hasn't been nearly as many hours as I thought, so I'm still only about 3/4 of the way through the what would be the first work week of this project, so that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so this episode, I'm not going to do too much. A couple of things I want to look at. As I mentioned last episode, I want to look at the adding a sound, just one sound for the moment, and maybe adding an effect or some effects for one of the weapons. I'm thinking the cannon, since that's the weapon I have these sounds for, so I'll probably do that within the course of this episode. But another thing, I've got a few art assets to update, one being this catapult. It's been re-exported now. You might remember that there were some bones that came out, were exported as renderable sort of mesh objects, so that's going to be replaced now with a new export. I find the easiest way to replace objects in Unity is not to drag them directly into the folder. So in this case, I have the catapult FBX file here in the project window. So what I meant to say is I don't want to drag it into the project window. I'd rather drag it directly into the folder in Windows Explorer. So yep. So here is the folder, and I'll just right click and drag, copy that in, overwrite it, and that should do. And that should be fine. That should have updated. And now if we have a look at our, it might be a bit different in this case because it's a prefab, so I might need to re-add it to the prefab, but in here you can see that those components are on the prefab, but they shouldn't be on our FBX. Okay, so there you can see the ARM and ARM2, which had on the previous version had those mesh renderers. They're now empty, just bone objects. So I'll update my prefab now with the new FBX. So I'm just going to delete. We've got shoot and load, turn off play automatically in that, just make sure it's all different. Right, so delete that one, and I'll just find anything that was referring to that. Possibly animation component, and maybe the reference node that was being parented to pivot, so that should be fine. I'll just apply that to the prefab and give that a run, just make sure it's still all working. Keep an eye out for any red errors down in the bottom left. Nothing there, so that should be fine. Alright. Alright, so that is very good. That's pretty much all I need to update for that one. The other thing, I'm not sure if the cloud mesh was updated, but it might have been, so I'll just update the cloud mesh in the same way. And this is a lot easier when you have some sort of version control system. The last sort of larger project I was working on with the team, we used a couple of version control systems, but in the end we used SVN, and I wrote a custom SVN window for Unity that it would mark in the project window. It would draw colors to determine, like if this ballista folder was, say, out of date, it would give it a yellow background or something, and if it was modified, or say if it was out of date, give it red, and if it was modified, to give it yellow. So that was pretty cool twofold. And you could also right click on it then and then say check in or check out, which is great. Check out everything and have your project constantly updated without issue was awesome. But also seeing what was changed by someone else, very important on a large team, so that you don't modify things that have been modified by someone else. Then you have to deal with sort of merging issues, which with a lot of the binary files in Unity, that can be a pain. They now have in Unity the version control. You can choose. I don't have an asset server license. I don't have any need for it, but you can choose meta files and serializes text. So I pretty much always use meta files in this case because I'm not sharing the project with anyone. But if you ever have a multi-person team where the Unity project needs to be used by multiple people, and that might be the case, say with other projects that Shane and I do with Southeast Games, where Shane will need to get in there and modify art assets directly in Unity, or work on levels and that sort of thing. I would definitely set up a meta file system then. In that way, basically every single file in your project will get a .meta file, which stores details about its individual settings, its import settings, things like that, but also primarily the unique identifier of that asset, and that is the main thing that you need to keep consistent between people's projects, because as you see this catapult is a prefab reference that in the scene that'll be stored as a reference to a prefab via that prefab's unique identifier. So if that ID is not the same amongst between different projects, then the other user will load it up on theirs, load up the scene, and that catapult won't be able to find the prefab that it's referring to because the ID will be different. So if you don't use meta files, then you really need to keep your library folder the same, and which is a nightmare, and is not the way to do it. So they added this meta files recently into, I think, in either 3.42, I think 3.5. They added support for meta files to be in the free version, which is good too for anyone in using them free. And text serialization is also great for if you're in a team you need to merge things like scene files or prefabs. Merging binary files is it's not really something you're going to be doing. So, but if it's in text format, then that can be merged, and probably automatically merged by a lot of source control software. So really good things there to consider. And the asset server license would be probably something good for larger teams, because you can then have metadata stored on a server. I believe is something as of 3.5. So what happens then is you don't have to worry about that sort of issue of metadata being inconsistent between two people's machines, which is quite a common problem in a large team, I've found, where one person imports an asset and it generates metadata. The other person imports the same asset, generates different metadata, same metadata except for different ID, or different metadata too if they have different import settings. And then one person checks in theirs, and then the other person tries to check in theirs, realizes theirs is different than the one that's already on there, and they either overwrite it or they get the other person's one. A lot of the time when you try to overwrite a metadata file, because the library folder contains, this is at least my understanding of it, because the library file contains that ID for that asset which you've generated, you put in a metadata file for that asset which has a different ID, the conflict will be resolved one of two ways, and more commonly I've found that the library file ID seems to take precedence, and you end up with a conflicting metadata ID for an asset, which is a bit of a nightmare to deal with as well. Okay, so that is a bit of a tangent. The clouds there, I've updated that mesh, so if all that was it might have even been the exact same mesh as before, I'm not sure. and I think, just having a look at that, I've got an animation component on there, even though the clouds have no animation. So I'm just going to re-import this and turn off animation generation. And one thing I should bring into this project and you know, any project I do really, is other stuff I've written as well for assets. FPX is having a sort of a text file that the artist can populate with all the import settings and you know, whether it has animations and what those animations are, and that way that on import I can read that file and set all the things accordingly, and it's just a bit of a time saver. Okay, so there are our clouds. I don't think they changed, but maybe they did. Nothing needs to be done either way. So let's jump over to the cannon and start thinking about adding these. For now, probably, you know, placeholder, but just getting something in there is probably worth doing. This sound and maybe some particle effects and that sort of thing. I'm not going to try and do too much with them for now. You know, not going to try and make them too fancy, but still looking forward to just seeing a bit more in there and making it feel a bit more like a game. So let's start with the sound. I put together a cannon fire sound from, I just grabbed a couple of public domain sound files from the internet, one of a cannon and one of a sniper rifle, and I just put them into Audacity, which is a pretty cool free audio editing program and recording program. And from Audacity I was able to combine them and just mess with them a little bit so they didn't sound too bad. So we'll give that a go. So we've got artwork, haven't got any sort of sound related folders, so let's do that now. Okay, sound. So this game will have some sort of music at some point, of course, and it'll have dialogue, and it'll have, we'll just call it sound effects. Might get rid of the the space, not really a big deal to me though. Yeah, weapons, cannon. So just doing some sort of basic structure, even though, you know, I've only got one file to put in there at the moment, but you know, this structure is going to help later on when I'm looking for particular sounds for different things. So you know, I want to look for the weapon sounds or the character sounds or ambient sounds. You know, it's important to set up a folder structure that will be useful, and I often find that it's better to not get too carried away. Like, I've only added exactly what I need right now, because you often, unless you're spending a lot of time on it, you can't think of all the possibilities. So I'm not going to think of every single sort of folder I'm going to need, and the ones I think of may not actually be what I need in the end. So rather than write a bunch of folder names now, like, you know, ambient and characters and leprechaun, whatever, you know, like blocks, destruction stuff, yeah, rather than do all that now and try and go, oh, this is the folder structure, this is how it's going to be, especially considering I'm the only one sort of adding files to this structure at the moment. It's a lot easier if I do it as I add the files to the system, so that way I know exactly what I need because I'm adding the file at the time and I'm not trying to think ahead about something that's really pretty irrelevant and not really worth wasting time on. So let's have a look at updating our weapon script to, and I'll delete this clouds object. This was the old clouds object, I think, still floating around, all those guys. We'll get rid of that, and yeah, we're going to need to update the weapon script with some sort of sound playing ability. So we'll open up Visual Studio and the weapon script. Okay, it might just close everything else. Alright, a fair few public variables here. It's a little bit unwieldy, but again, not too bad. I don't really mind. I think I've mentioned this before, having, maybe I said the opposite, I don't really mind having a bit of a wall of stuff here. It'd be nice to break it out a little bit, but in this case, you know, a weapon's a weapon, and it's going to have these sorts of things. A lot of these are pretty painful, though. It'd be nice to do a custom editor for these, maybe, at least to display some of these separately, like all the aiming stuff, you know. So I could have a sort of pop-out category saying, you know, aiming angles and yeah, pretty much aiming angle stuff, or all this aiming stuff here. I could just collapse that. That'd be a nice thing to be able to do. So I might look at that later on in another episode. So we need a sound section, so I might add that down the bottom. We've got the animation bit here, and privates, weapon tilt points. Okay. So we'll add an audio clip called. Well, actually, let's add an array of audio clips called fire clips. Now, fire is probably not an accurate term for a lot of those weapons, so call it shoot clips. So I've made it an array so that I can add multiple clips, so I can just randomly pick from them later on, just for a bit of variation. And I'll add the reference to the audio source. And that's so I don't have to have the audio source on this weapons object here. I can just put it wherever I want, and I might have multiple audio sources. You know, one for shooting, and a different one for different things to do with weapon. You know, steam coming out, or some sort of noise here, and general operation noise, reloading noises. And I might not want them to all come from the same position. It depends on where the camera is going to be, and that's actually another thing. I might even look at that this episode, but I've been thinking thinking a lot about the camera angles, and when I say a lot, I mean a little. But you know, if this is going to be a game with just, you know, cool looking weapons and fun looking dwarves doing cool things, I think we need to see it. And you know, I don't think this is necessary. You know, it's not bad. You know, it has a kind of cool aspect to it. You can sort of see all sorts of cool stuff, but how about, you know, this instead, or even, you know, this. I think as long as you can see down the trajectory of the projectile, see sort of where it's going to hit, see where the trajectory line, the geometry of that intersects the geometry of you know, what you're aiming at, you should have a good sense of where the bullet's going to go. So I don't think this you know, Angry Bird style is necessary. But I might change my mind. I mean, again, it's tough. I mean, at the moment it works. I'm quite happy with it, really. But I just thought it might be better to. I mean, that is actually kind of cool. Yeah, look at it. I probably won't get into it this episode. It's maybe something I'll prototype in another episode. Just test out, keeping it at this sort of angle, maybe the entire time. And it also then saves me the issue of figuring out how to handle the camera changes on on a platform like the iPad or the iPhone or any mobile, I guess. Won't be discriminating against Android. I do actually have a Galaxy Nexus as my primary phone at the moment, so yeah, it's going to be, if it is mobile, which it will be, it'll be, you know, a universal iOS app, and most likely, and and Android as well. So yeah, I mean, keeping this perspective, I think could be kind of cool, and we could then put a bit more focus on. And I was talking with Shane today. We'll go on over a bunch of the art stuff and talking about how things are going to work with the weapons and how they're going to turn and all these sorts of things. So I think there's going to be some cool stuff to look at. what the dwarves are going to be doing with with these weapons as you move them around and take your aim and shoot and that sort of thing. So I want to be able to see that. I want to be up close and personal as much as makes sense. So I think what I might do is just put a zoom in, and the zoom might even curl upwards to this sort of state. So you can zoom in and out, but maybe have some sort of aiming thing here, the same as what we've got now perhaps, but just built in a way that allows you to do it from any perspective, and that might be the way to go. So anyway, let's quickly stop digressing and get on to audio. So this is going to be the shoot audio source for the Canon. Drop it onto our Canon. I'll just drop it into the ref nodes, which is not entirely ref node. Whatever. I'll make another one. Make another object for it. Okay. At the moment that is not anywhere near where we need it. So I might even just go to our bullet creation point, copy all that, just one of those, paste that, and that should be about right. I don't know where a Canon's, like the noise of a Canon actually comes from, but let's say it's just there. And I was having a quick look at YouTube for reference on what Canon file looks like, looking for the slow motion Canon shots. It seems like for the most part there's a fair bit of fire, just sort of flames coming out briefly, maybe a bit of and the effect that I've got, which is a pretty crappy one really, it's again placeholder, just something I quickly knocked up from a few bits and pieces, sort of a flare outwards, and maybe some flame, but a lot of smoke, a lot of white smoke seems to come out, so that could be something we look at. And considering it's a steam powered Canon, that might be different. So that's real world reference may not be entirely accurate for this thing, but let's use that as a starting point, and we can tweak things a bit later on as we see fit. So we need to make that sound, and we've got the audio source we need to set up, which I can do that now once I actually give it an audio source. And the audio source is a component that basically plays audio from a position in space. If it's a 3D audio source, it will play it from that position, and if it's 2D, then it's not positional. The audio source is then heard by audio listeners, which are typically placed on the camera or on a game object that's near or underneath the camera in the hierarchy. So that way that your camera has the ears essentially, and if the audio source is on the left of the camera, as it is in this example, I would hear it in my left speakers, behind surround sound behind your rear speakers and so forth. So positioning the audio in a good place is fairly important. It's not necessarily that big of an issue if the camera is always going to be in this sort of position. It doesn't really matter if I have it there or here or there, to be honest, as long as it's in the right sort of general direction from the camera. But considering I'm not exactly sure of where things are going to end up, I want to position it sort of where I expect it to come from, the sound. So the fall off for this is, and one thing I haven't really investigated too much is the this example sort of listener line here. Basically, this is saying that's the full volume, and this is zero volume, and it's got a sort of logarithmic fall off here at the moment. And at that's 50 units or 50 meters, which are my units. 50 meters is pretty much zero, and for maybe 10 meters, it falls off over the first 10 meters or so. In this listener line, once I figure out how to make it update, which I have a bit of an issue with this, where I think maybe it's to do with the camera position in the game view, but I have also, I swear I've had it working in the scene view. So if someone can, I could look it up, but it's not something I really think about too often to bother. So if anyone has any, just give me a quick rundown in the comments or on the forum of how that works. That'd be cool. So at the moment I think it's doing it from the game camera's distance, which is about 120 meters. So if I play, I should be able to whip the camera around to the Canon, and you can see the listener line there moving around. And so at this distance, which is, and that's way too far away to see anything, and that's, so I'm definitely going to change that camera, at least that camera. That's too far away to sort of hear much, so there's a couple of things we can do. We can change the minimum distance, which is probably one of the more effective ways of doing this. Or you could also change the fall off, and at the moment you get logarithmic, you get linear, and then you can do your own. So linear is not really very ideal. Logarithmic is alright, but you get an issue of only having a pretty short range to really hear things. So minimum distance is a pretty good way to tweak this out. So I might just set that to sort of 10, and then at this distance I'm getting only about 0.1, which isn't that great, but it's very easy to test out when we actually have the sound in there. So I might update that to 10 meters minimum, and my camera will be a lot closer than that. So I might even change that now. So let's go to our cameras, main view, and set it to right there. Alright, we're going to chuck that audio source into that, and shoot clips, we're going to grab our Canon fire, throw it into there. Okay, I'm going to apply that. Now we're going to jump into the script and make something happen. Another issue with audio sources, not really an issue, but just something to be aware of, is that they can't play multiple clips at a time. So if you want to play more than one clip, or a common thing would be to fade between two clips, crossfade, you need to have two audio sources to do that. So this is another reason why I've got shoot audio source, and then other aspects of the weapon which will need to play at the same time will have their own audio source. So let's go back to the code again, go to shoot, and play the sound. So I've got a shoot animation method here. I might make a shoot sound 1. Caps lock. So let's check if audio source isn't null. And shoot clips has something in it, and if that's the case, I will set the audio sources clip, and I think possibly play, give it a clip, no. I'll set its clip to shoot clips, and then a random range between 0 and shoot clips length. This guy's gonna play. Alright. So I'll probably add another. Got one warning, this guy. I don't even know what this is doing, I'm just getting the window. Do I have to. I thought I had to show it or something. It's quick selection. So I'll just delete call show, so I'll get rid of that warning. Yeah, if you can help it, get rid of any warnings you have in your code, because it's just a pain in the ass having your console filled up with warnings or that sort of thing. Yeah, so I'll probably add another method similar to the shoot animation and shoot sound one shortly for shoot effects, so I might even just add that now and just leave it empty. Okay. There's also a lot of updates I'm doing to the Advanced Surface Shaders package, which I have included in this project. Actually, one more thing before I forget, just to detour for a moment, I did forget to update one of the bits of artwork, which Shane would have probably been annoyed at, because this was the one I think he was asking me to update. The skybox textures, he's updated those, so let's update all of them. One thing I'd love Windows to have is some sort of modifier key you can hold down when you're copying to just automatically say yes, or yeah, copy and overwrite, whatever, when you're doing any sort of move and copy operations in Windows Explorer, because what a nightmare, what a nightmare it is. And I'm sure I could use Free Commander or Total Commander and that sort of thing, and I've used them before, and they're great, but I just often don't think about putting them on and using it. And I should probably I think I'll get Free Commander again. It's a good Windows Explorer alternative, so I might give that a go. So those were updated, different colours I think. So now we've got our sound. Let's see what happens. Alright, that sounded like a gunshot. So as you can tell, that's not the greatest of sounds, but I think it works as a placeholder. It's not too bad. It is sort of a cannon sound, but it's also got a bit of a rifle fire added to it, so that's probably what you're hearing there. Okay. Yeah, these separate camera modes. I think it's got to go. I think it was a bad idea. I think this is the spot. I want to do everything from this angle. I want to be able to tilt it. I want to be able to move it left and right, and I want to shoot. Alright, so the sound plays. So that's step one. So that was pretty basic, pretty easy. So the next thing is adding the effect. And again, that was a placeholder sound, and this is a placeholder effect, just a temporary thing, just to get something in there working. So let's go to artwork and add an effects folder. In here we're going to add a weapons cannon, and I'll drop in this Canon Fire PNG. I haven't actually tested this out at all, and you can see it's sort of crappy quality. It's pixelated. It's just a composite of a few different freely available sort of muzzle flare sort of effects. So it's pretty dodgy. It's got no alpha map to it, so I'm going to have to use you know, some sort of blending. I'll probably just use a particle shader to do that for now. So there's an alpha, an additive blend for the moment. And additive blends are good. They're faster than a multiplicative sort of blend. So theoretically, an add is faster than a multiply. So let's chuck in the effect. What I need is, I'm just going to use a plane, and right, go back to this guy, add in another one. Whoops. What is the damn shortcut? Nah. Okay, child there called effects. Under that, I'm going to add one called flare, muzzle flare, and I'll throw the plane under that guy. So I'll just reset him so he's nearby, bring him up, rotate him 90 degrees so you can see the guy, and we'll now make him bigger. I'm referring to him as a male for some reason, so that's happening. And I should probably make it the size ratio of the Canon Fire texture. So what I mean by that is the Canon Fire texture here has a certain ratio. In this case I've made it 512 by 256, so this needs to be a 2:1 ratio for the texture not be stretched without me messing around with any sort of tiling and yeah, what's the terms in the materials of having Unity? Yeah, tiling and offset sort of stuff to make it look right. So basically we're going to do, say, 4:2, and onto this I will need my material, and I'm looking at the material directly here with the textures because it's easier to I find a lot of the time to keep these sort of things together if they're for a specific sort of thing, you know, a bit of a miscellaneous bit of artwork effects, you know, just keep it all together. And that's just a preference. You can do whatever you want. I'm not telling you what to do, but I like my advice. Alright, so that looks like something. Let's see if we can get that to be a bit more intense. It looks alright. From the perspective that we'll be seeing it, which, you know, I might make it a different angle or rotate it such that, well, I think it's probably okay. We could have a look at doing just a sort of basic effect of, oh, that didn't. Okay. Doing that sort of thing where I have two of them rotated 9 degrees differently, and just because of the nature of the shape of it and the size of it and that sort of thing, you don't really notice, but you can now see it from all perspectives. So that probably will work, and it's quite cheap. That's only, you know, 4 triangles altogether with a fairly basic shader on there. And there's probably even mobile shaders that are even faster than that, albeit without the color settings, so they look a bit different. So I might just stick with what I got now. What's the alpha do for this guy? Just as you'd expect. Alright, I like the look of that. Position wise I might need to tweak it just a tad, and I'm not too impressed with what I did where I offset the plane so far from the muzzle plane, so muzzle flare, so I might just reset their position and now move the muzzle flare into position. Might move the muzzle flare to there and move the planes out, each out what's the actual, I think I might have, no. So out 2, muzzle flare, just shift him back to around the start of the barrel. Alright. What I might do is either just flash it up for a moment, or I could flash it and scale it a bit. I think I'll just have a look at just flashing it up for just a bit for now. So we need a script just to delete that after a certain amount of time. So that's a very generic script. We'll just add that to, we got object, killing zone, up beside it, okay. We'll call it destroy object. Pretty basic. Just going to, and I've upgraded to Unity 3.5.3 and lost my template again. I think I've got it backed up somewhere and it doesn't take long to rewrite it, but now when I create a new script I don't have my fancy backup, my fancy template, so that's a bit frustrating. I might just have a look at getting that back. Just one moment. Alright, just back from changing that template. I might delete my destroy object and just remake it, see if the template worked. Sure did. Might overwrite the template with this guy. Uppercase. That was the. Okay, now I should have the proper line endings I want in the template. So destroy object. I'm going to give it a time. And let's just keep track of how long it's been alive. And just destroy it after lifetime is greater than destroy after seconds. I'm going to destroy the full game object. Okay. So our muzzle flare is going to be we're going to take that out. Well, first what I'll do is create a reference node. Create a reference node. Muzzle flare point. Okay, and then we're going to drag the muzzle flare out and make a separate prefab for it. And what our cannon will do is instantiate those muzzle flares when we tell it to. So we need an effect. We'll just won't bother about folder structure for now for that. Muzzle flare, that's cool. Delete that. No, actually we'll need to add that script we wrote to it. Destroy object. Survive for maybe 0.4 of a second. Let's test that out. Okay, we'll delete him. Now a weapon is going to need effect stuff. And I might just make another separate class called, well, actually maybe I'll make a full-on mono behavior for effects. No, I'm not going to do that for now. Let's do a class called weapon effect. I can always change this later, but instantiate point and game object array effects effect prefabs. Alright, so the idea here is that I'm going to have an array of these weapon effects in my weapon, and it's going to instantiate these prefabs at these points. Yeah, that'll do. So weapon effect, shoot effects. So I can have different effects for different things. In this case, I'm just going to add the shoot effects, and in my method called shoot effects, I'm simply going to run through my shoot effects array, and then run through the what do I call those? Effect prefabs dot length. So I mustn't have made that public. No. Okay, run through my effects prefab array. And instantiate those at that point. And I'll use the instantiate points rotation as well, I think. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm running through all the effects in that array, running through all the prefabs in that for that effect, and then instantiating each of those prefabs at the instantiate point. So what we need to do now is just go to our cannon, and then in shoot effects we're going to add one, and it's going to be our muzzle flare. So we'll add our reference point, which is muzzle flare point, and we will add our prefab reference, which is the muzzle flare prefab. We just need one effect for the moment. We can add a particle effect shortly. Apply that, and now when we play, our cannon should, but not, I don't think it did. Oh yeah, it did. So it creates that muzzle flare, and then after 0.3 of a second that flare will destroy itself. But we couldn't see that flare because the position was wrong. So let's see what that's all about. Okay, here's our flare. Muzzle flare has been created at the point being muzzle flare point, which is right there. Okay, I need to parent muzzle flare point to the pivot, same as bullet creation point. So add an object startup to it and parent it to our pivot. Bullet creation point is parented to cannon. There's no reason for that as far as I know. I don't think it's rotated separately from the pivot, but we'll leave it as is for now. Apply that. Now hopefully we'll be able to see from that perspective our muzzle flare. Yeah, I can see that. At the moment the trajectory indicator stuff gets in the way a fair bit. I'm going to we'll be changing the graphics for that later on, so that's just a temporary issue, but you can see there it probably needs to be a bit bigger, but you can see that muzzle flare. Let's make it about twice the size. It's good to exaggerate things if you want them to be, you know, a visible, cool effect. So we're looking at it from like back here, you can barely see it. So we'll grab the planes and make them 8 by 4, and then shift them along 4. Okay. What I also want to do, and this will be different for different platforms, but I'll do it just now for PC. It's better to, I find it's better to build things big and scale down, but I mean that's not always the case. Sometimes it's better to, you know, scale up for different platforms. This isn't that big of a deal, but I'm going to add a light to it. So this light is going to be a fiery orange light, short range, 5 meters, high intensity. I think I have linear lighting on, which is good. I like it, but it also messes with your impression of thing, and that's with gamma, regular sort of gamma space sort of lighting on. That's linear lighting there. It's much nicer. But our point light, that orange light against that green is coming out sort of a yellowy, not very nice looking colour. So let's try and get something a bit more deeper. Alright. So when there's other guys around, that will be able to do a bit more. We will also, I think I'll just tweak this for a little bit longer. Bit bigger range. Keep the intensity fairly high. Alright, that'll do. Muzzle flare, apply that. Delete. Alright, so now we should be able to see it a little bit better. You can see the light there. That was alright. Hey, attempted to find on playing an idle animation 10 times. It's funny. See if we can see it from this perspective. Yeah, it looked alright. Well, it didn't look that great. It was it probably does need to scale a bit, but you can see it. So that's and that looks pretty cool from that perspective there. I don't mind that. Alright, so far so good. And the system now we've just built here, this little shoot effects system allows us to add more game objects just in the inspector there. So we'll need some sort of particle effect. Now I guess I'll use the new particle system, even though I haven't had a whole lot of experience with it. So I'll create another particle system. Most of the stuff I've been doing more recently with particles has been in projects that haven't had the luxury of being able to just update to the latest version of Unity willy-nilly. So willy-nilly. The particle effect system added in 3.5 hasn't got a whole lot of use out of me. And what I have used of it, I haven't really liked it. But that's probably just because I'm not used to it. So let's deal with it. It's pretty cool, actually. I mean, I'm not going to knock it. Did I import particle effects? Standard assets particle effects. I think I did. Yeah, here's a bunch of smoke ones. So it's fine, a smoke effect. That doesn't look too bad. And work with that. I can't find one that doesn't look too bad. That's a shame. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Let's go with maybe that one. Smoke trail. What does that look like? And there's probably some merit in looking at their in the standard assets. They probably have some particle systems built in, and it's probably some merit in you know, looking at those and building from them rather than building from scratch, especially if you're new to the system. Which that's a decent looking one. Smoke trail is for trails, obviously. It's not what I'm after. But it could be cool to add that to the back of the cannonball. Fluffy smoke. Alright. Wonder if there's a way to... and these are using the old particle system as well, so that's not super interesting. That's why I can't visualize them without seeing those wireframes there. Yes, that's not really what we're after. So which texture is that one? Smoke 4. Detailed smoke. It's not really what I'm after either. It's got to be a fairly quick effect. So this guy here, that's perfect, right? No, so let's grab that material. I don't want to modify with standard assets. That's not a fun thing to do. So if you're ever going to work from a standard asset, I highly recommend duplicating and dragging out to your own file system, your own folders, and working from there. So we're gonna yeah. Okay. So under Canon, maybe this is the Canon via smoke. Righto. So that's cool. I can just go to my particle system and drop on that material, and now I can edit it without worrying about messing up. Anyway, messing up a standard asset in my project. I can always re-import them, but I'd rather not have to worry about that and then figure out which ones I've modified and which ones I need to keep modified. Alright, probably not the best looking texture, so let's swap that out for smoke. This guy. Make it a bit bigger. So start size, you can just set sort of one size here, or we can set a random between two constants. It'll be a bit easier than whatever sort of curve based system they have there. I don't need any sort of fine detail. I'm going to slow it down a bit. So it's got start speed, let's bring that down. Maybe again random between two constants, between 1.5 and 2.2 or something. Okay, the color, start color's fine. Where's the color of a lifetime? Let's turn that on. And random between two gradients. Random between two gradients. Yeah, I'll just stick with. I might do that in a sec, but for now, we'll just start it off completely transparent. Quickly go to fully opaque, and then go back to fully transparent over its lifetime. Okay. So we're going to need a couple of different particle systems, one being one that persists just for a little while after the shot, of just something coming out, and one that's just a quick puff of smoke. And that one's going to be a fairly translucent one, to not hide the muzzle flare and the shot, but the camera can then whip through the particles, and that might look pretty cool. So this one, maybe we'll just change the tint color here, make it a bit more white, bring the alpha down, just globally across all these particles. Okay. It's not too bad. Yeah, man, it's not so bad. Let's add a bit of rotation to them though. So rotation, start rotation, make that random. Between two constants, so to 0 and 360, and we'll add a bit of rotation over lifetime. It's not much, it's a little bit, and make that random as well. Man, I think I'll just go one direction, not negative 15, 15 for example. I'll just keep them all going, rotating the same direction as you'd expect they would, probably. Probably still a little bit too fast. Okay, it's not so bad. And I'll just slow them down instead, even a fair bit more. Okay. So whether or not you'll really have a chance to see this from any perspective, I don't know, but for now I kind of like that. We can always tweak these later, but it gives just a general sort of what I'm sort of after, and I might even leave that there for quite a while after the shot. Okay, so we're going to call that the smoking barrel, and we'll chuck on our destroy object script. Destroy it after 10 seconds, and we can then throw that into our resources folder in effects. Okay, and I'll just delete that one. So we'll call that smoking barrel, that material, duplicate it, and call this one cannon fire smoke. So I shouldn't have bothered doing that, should have. Anyway, cool, cannon fire smoke is going to be this guy, and we're going to add in a new particle system. And we're going to give it our cannon fire smoke material in the renderer, which doesn't pop out. Yep. Right, we'll do a few of those things again. Say start rotation, random between two constants, 0 to 360. We're going to change the velocity. So initial velocity is some sort of. This is one of the things I don't necessarily like about it, but I guess I can just rotate the guy. But then I need to give him a parent because I'm going to be setting him to the rotation at that point, so it's a bit of a pain. It's a bit of a pain. This is the cannon fire smoke. So this particle system here is going to get rotated like that. I'm going to reset its position, move this guy down to closer to the barrel, so I can get a better idea of what it's going to look like in spot position. Alright, and there we go, there's our stuff going in the right direction. This needs to be a lot bigger for one. So about 3 and 5. Duration about 4. Speed random between two constants again, between 7 and 14, 15 maybe. It needs to just come out quickly. It needs to be a big bang, so maybe even higher. Yep. The emission shape, bring that in a bit. I'm trying to make the Okay. That's all good. See if that's the right texture for the job. Is anything that looks any better? I mean, these are all fairly dark looking. These other ones that look like they could be okay are all fairly dark. I want a fairly white looking bit of smoke, so that will probably do. Alright, we need... what else can we do with this one? This system. Is there the equivalent of like a one-shot looping? Where's the mission rate? 10, about 50. Duration is what? Is that different than lifetime? It's lifetime 5. Let's see. Make them last for 4 seconds. Duration 0.2. Simulate that. 0.1. Create 100. Simulate. Okay. Where does it create them from? Just that point? Right. Let's change it to a sphere. Where does that create from? Everywhere. Randomized direction from shell. I don't want it to be randomized direction, but it seems to be what they're doing. I want them to go down my specific direction. Whatever, I'll just stick with the cone for the moment. It's not worth the hassle. Set the position again. Okay. How about we go back to point 2. Make them bigger. Make them faster. Change the color over time. Might change the force over lifetime as well. Alright, this one's a bit more interesting. I should get vector to work with. So what does that do then? Nothing. So I can apply force, maybe velocity. Let's limit velocity over lifetime. What's that? Simulate. Okay. So got my start speed as something. So don't want to limit it. So if I say 50, does that? Okay, but dampening's on. Crank dampen. Can't crank dampen. Okay, yep. Alright. Okay, so we'll see how that works. Cannon fire smoke, drop that in. Delete. Back to our cannon object, and we're going to add 2 more. So in addition to muzzle flares, we're going to have smoking barrel, cannon fire smoke, and we'll apply that. Collapse that for a second and bring our friend cannon fire smoke in, and we'll add our script to it. Destroy object, and we'll destroy. I think how long did it last? 4 or 5 seconds. We'll destroy it after 6 seconds, long enough for it to do its thing. Okay, and we'll play that. That didn't go in the right direction. It looks like it's moving in world space direction of whatever. Oh, wrong button. Okay. So here is our cannon fire smoke. There's our particle system. Sure, it's moving down Z, but that Z is not the correct Z. So where is all of that sorted out? Start rotation, no, none of that. Simulation space, local. Where is our particle effect? Let's go. Okay. Cannon fire smoke, particle system. Shooting down that direction. Okay, cannon fire smoke, rotation was wrong, that's why. So I need to copy the rotation from bullet create muzzle flare point. That's what I'm using for all of those. Copy the. No, I'll switch to world for a second just to be sure. Copy world position, world rotation, and jump back to our parent here. Paste, particle system. Okay, it's alright. Might just rotate it like so, just to get it looking sort of right. And that should do it. Apply that. Delete and play. So this little trail one I have here, which is moving in the wrong direction as well, it's just going to disappear after a bit. So that's something I'd want to fix up and make it stop emitting first. That was the smoking barrel. So that one's just not going to happen without a parent as well. I mean, I could possibly change the velocity settings and actually put an axis in there, but this seems like a simpler option. Smoking barrel. Rotate, there it is. Drag this guy into that. Reset his position. It's all good. So let's change him to duration. We'll turn off looping. 5 seconds. So I think I stopped it after 10 seconds in that script. So let's do 8-second duration, and we'll just turn the script up a bit to 15. Simulate that. How long does that last for? Well, 8 seconds, but particle lifetime is 5. So it'll last for 13 seconds. The last particle. It seems like enough time. Okay, we will now assign that to the prefab instead. Delete that, save, play. probably too opaque for my liking. Should make it just a bit more translucent, but I can do that by modifying the material. Okay, just a very subtle effect. I like it. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We've got a bit of action in there now, a bit of sound, some effects. It's all starting to feel a bit more like a game. See how it's... Let's do another shot. This puff of smoke here should be a bit more elongated, so I'll have to modify that system in the future to be probably start as a bigger volume and move out. But for the moment, I'm pretty happy with this. That, I mean, that's a fairly basic little bit of effects there, but that's going to add to, if I add that to all the weapons, something to that extent. Obviously the other weapons won't have the same sort of systems. They won't have smoke and steam and fire. They'll have their own bits of particles and dirt getting kicked up, and dust and bits of stone chips and all that sort of thing going on. So that's going to be just interesting, just coming up with different effects for each weapon. Cannon's probably the more conventional in terms of video game effects and that sort of thing, muzzle flares and smoke. Ballista's going to be, maybe we could do some sort of wood splinters coming off, stuff like that. This guy's going to have all sorts of mystical effects going on, so that'll be different and cool. And the trebuchet is going to be just lots of whatever, massive. It's going to be massive, and it's going to then have probably massive bits of debris and crap falling off the boulder it's throwing, or the whatever it is throwing. Okay, I think that's going to do it. I'm going to end it there. I'm not going to drag this on, go off on weird tangents and ramble too much. Quick episode, sort of an hour and 20 minutes, not too bad. Pretty happy with that. Got those effects in, got some sounds in, good progress in a different sort of direction to what I've been doing recently, so yeah, that's good. I'm gonna get some more ideas together for upcoming videos. The art assets going to keep coming in, and we're going to keep putting those in, but I'd like to come up with some new things to do, a bit different than what I've done before, over the next couple of hours of work on this game, and get to the point, hopefully by hour 40, of having a playable level or two, at which point I can go in and do a 40-hour catch-up video, just sort of demo where it's at, and actually have something decent to show, and then I can maybe in the next 40 hours I can actually start planning for the 40 hours beyond, from 40 to 80, and we can probably start having a bit more structure to what we're doing. The art assets will probably be complete enough to start developing all the systems of the game, and we can start planning out when we might have some more, or some menu stuff in, or in certain animations, and again, let's start looking at things like I guess more sounds, but also iPad ports and that sort of thing. Get it running on those systems and figure out the controls and the graphics and the camera angles and just get the whole game playing and looking good. Because I feel like broadly design of a game, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent now, but just quickly, broadly design of a game, it's very important to get a good core idea in place, but even the best idea can still come out as a crappy game, and you can still make a pretty good game out of a crappy idea. It's all about the little decisions and knowing when you've made a poor decision, or being able to take a step back and look at things with fresh eyes, take feedback on, just be able to tweak your design, come up with the right calls at the right times, make all the little decisions right. It all adds up to an overall experience. And this game at the moment may sometimes feel like a bit generic, bit boring. Like, is it actually going to be fun? It can be. I think it can be amazingly, awesomely fun. I think it'd be a great game that everyone raves about. Potentially, it's just about making the right decisions at the right times and putting the right amount of polish on the right areas. So, coming up with what is the fun in this and exploiting that to the fullest potential, building the systems required to exploit that, make it fun all the time, make it super crisp and sexy and smooth, crisp and smooth at the same time. Just make it a fun game to play on all platforms, make it feel polished and AAA as much as a game like this can be. That's a trick, and that's something that we're going to be working very hard on with this game. I'm really excited to get something out of this at the end of the day, beyond these videos. So that'll do for this episode of Every Semicolon. As you know, I don't have to say it, you know why I'm doing this camera perspective a number of times in this video on the catapult. You can thank YouTube for it. That will be the last thing I'll say for this episode. So that's 20, that's a milestone. Catch me on the Unity forum, gamedev.net, journals, southeastgames.com, and Twitter. My Twitter is mcar, @mcar, and I also have a Southeast Games Twitter, but I don't update very often. I should start doing that. So, and please, comment in the YouTube video as well. It's a great place to comment on a specific episode and give good feedback on my ramblings. So that'll do. Thanks for that. Catch you in episode 21.